Hey Pyro, I want to show you today how to make this guy so cute. This is my little Gnome for Christmas subscription box. If you guys haven't seen it, it's called the Burn Savvy Crate, and it is a wood burning kit in a box. It comes with everything you need, all the materials that you need to finish a project from start to finish. I'm so excited. And this is the workshop showing you exactly step by step how to use what's in this box. Now, if you don't have the box, you are welcome to go buy all of the ingredients yourself. But that's gonna take you a lot of extra time. You might not have everything on hand. And the subscription box, the Crate Club, is here to make those projects super easy for you. There are a couple of projects in this box, not just this handsome guy. And if you want to subscribe to that, head on over to crateclub.burnsavvy.com. If you're new here, I'm Jannie Lisonbee, your Pyro professor. Let's burn. First things first, we've got to sand the wood. Now, if you bought the kit, the accessories kit, you'll have one of these sanding blocks that you can use. I use these a lot, as you can tell. So the next thing we're going to do is cut out the patterns. So I'm going to cut off the instructions and keep those to the side. You can cut it right along the line if you want. I'm going to cut it a little closer to the pattern. And we're supposed to cut these out in rectangular shapes. Next step is to put the pattern onto the wood. So here's the pattern, and I'm going to line it up. Now, if you are having a hard time seeing around those edges, you can cut the edges. Just leave enough space for the tape to be across the top. So what you do is you take a piece of tape or two. Once you have it lined up where you want it, let me go over a little bit, maybe up a little. Then you're gonna tape it down just across one side. And then you can lift it and it falls back in exactly the same spot, and that's what you want. So now it's time to trace the pattern. Take your carbon paper. You want the shiny side face down and the matte grayish side face up. And in between the wood, you want the shiny part face down on the wood and the other part face up. Then you're going to take a pencil or pen, or if you have a tracing tool, you're going to take your tracing tool and just trace around it. Now, as you go along, you might not remember exactly where you left off if you're using one of these tracing tools. All you have to do is lift it and you can see exactly where you traced. There it is. I'll just take that off. Now it's time to choose a nib for the burner. If you're using a burner like this, I would recommend choosing a nib like one of these. This is the flow point and this is the mini flow. And these are the ones that I think are going to give you the cleanest lines and be the easiest to control. Now, if you're planning to use a burner more like this one, then I would recommend using one of these two nibs instead. Like the other burner, you're going to have a larger point and a smaller point, and both of them are going to give you fairly clean lines, but the smaller one will be a little bit harder to control and the larger one will give you larger lines. If you're going to use a professional tool like, say, this Colwood detailer, then I would recommend using a nib like this, which is a writing nib, or a ballpoint nib. See how it has a ball on the end? I would use a medium to a large size ballpoint for this project. Now, since so many of you have this burner, that's the one I'm going to use. This one. And I am going to use the finer nib, the mini flow. A little harder to control, but it gets you a really nice, clean, crisp line. I'm going to turn that up to medium-high level. Then give it about 3 to 5 minutes to totally heat up. Then it's time to test it on the scrap piece of wood. And just make sure that you're getting some pretty solid lines here. Yep, this looks ready for me. So I'm gonna put this to the side and start burning. Now there are a couple of tips and tricks. First of all, I like to use a beanbag to prop my hand up. This means I don't have to use my pinky to prop up my hand, and there's less cramping going on because my hand is at the same level as my burn. I also have a full video on beginner wood burning techniques, and if you'd like to see that, I will go ahead and link that right here for you. I'll also put it down in the description for you to make that easy. But those techniques are going to help this project be so much easier for you. Now the nib started coming loose, which made it so that it didn't have a good connection and it wasn't burning well. When that happens, just take a pair of pliers and at the very base, gently give it a little twist to tighten it. And this way you don't damage the nib and you can reconnect the heat to the burner. Now I also noticed that the burner was starting to get dirty. If the nib gets dirty, it's not going to burn very well. So it's important that we scrape that off. You can use a cleaning cloth. While my tool is hot, I just use a piece of denim. Just be careful that you don't have any lint on the burner when you're done, because that can leave blue flecks on the wood, and then the burner will set that blue into the wood. Oops, I totally forgot that line right there. That's okay though. I'll just get a pencil. If you do that, all you have to do is just fill in the space that you missed. Thankfully, this wasn't a very big piece, but usually you don't miss the big pieces. Those are pretty noticeable. So I'm just gonna fill that in real quick. Once you have traced over the entire pattern with the wood burning tool, then it's done. At least the burning part is. And it's ready for paint. Now, this is also the best time to add something to the back. I like to add stuff to the back before I add paint, before I add sealant, anything like that. Just add that right now. And now it's time to add our pops of color. I love this part. So I am taking the green paint. You can choose whichever paint color you want, but what you want to do is space out the colors every 3. So you have 3 colors in your box, red, green, and blue, and you're going to space this out. Every 3rd light is going to get painted green. So here I've got 2 on that one, so I'm going to count out 1, 2, and do this 3rd one here green, and then I will do the same thing with the red and with the blue. Now it's important to let this completely dry because the next step is adding sealant, and if it's not dry, the sealant could crack where it's over the paint. So you let that dry, and then you get a piece of cardboard to protect whatever surface it is that you're going to be sealing this piece on. Once it's dry, it's time to seal it. We are using a polyacrylic and a small applicator brush that came in the subscription box. And all you're going to do is stir that up and then dip it in and brush it on. And you can be generous with it, but it does say to use a thin coat. And I can tell you from experience, a thin coat is way better. It dries way faster. You can add your 2nd or 3rd coat. Oh, it's got a little clump on there. You can add your 2nd or 3rd coat without having an issue, but if you do it too thick, it just takes longer. And I don't want it to take longer. It really is better to do 3 thin coats than it is to do 1, 2, or 3 thick coats, okay? You can see that the wood is already swallowing that up there on the sides. The next thing I want to do is get the edges, get the bark. And I'm trying to go from every direction because that helps to get it into all those little nooks and crannies. And I do a little tapping motion that helps to get rid of the excess bubbles. And it also helps to get the finish down in the little crevices. This first coat is probably the most important coat because this is going to be the one that glues down all the loose pieces of bark. And then I will do a quick swipe around the top to get the excess off at the front, because certainly I don't want that there either. Now sometimes, especially in this first coat, you will get little bits of bark stuck in the sealant. Just swipe that on your extra piece of cardboard and that way it doesn't get back in the sealant. See that on the brush? We're just gonna swipe that off so it doesn't get in there. So as I'm going along, instead of swiping on the side of the jar, if there's bark on my brush, I'm gonna swipe it down here on the cardboard instead. Okay, so that is the first coat. There we go. Just wiping off the excess. You don't really want any excess on there. And then we're gonna let that dry for 2 hours. Polyacrylic takes 2 hours to dry. We're gonna close up the polyacrylic and save it for the next round. And we're going to wrap this in a grocery bag so that I don't have to wash it in between strokes. However, if you got a lot of wood in your brush from putting sealant on the bark, then you will want to wash it with soap and water in between. Now that it has dried for 2 hours, we're gonna give it a quick sanding with our 220 grit, and then we'll do a second coating. Now remember, you don't want to sand too harshly. All you're trying to do is rough up the surface so that you can add an extra layer. We're going to unwrap our paintbrush. Stir the finish. And give it a good coat. Okay, that is ready to dry. Again, we're gonna do one more coat after this, so I'm going to wrap up my brush and I'm going to close this up. After you've done the third coat, and let it totally dry, then it is ready to add some hanging hardware to the back. Now in the crate that you got, there is a sawtooth hanger, and you're going to try to put it in the center of the back, at the top, center of the top of the back. And typically I eyeball this, but the way that I have found was best is that I will lift up the piece and I will hold it with one finger on either side until it's hanging exactly where I want it to be. And then I will put the sawtooth hanger where my finger is. That generally works pretty well. If you want to measure, you can, but with the rounds, it's a little bit hard. Then you simply tap in each side using your hammer. And this hammer here is the one that comes in the Woodburning tools and accessories kit. That's in there good and sturdy, and it's ready to hang. Now there is another workshop that you're not gonna wanna miss that goes right along with this Gnome for Christmas sign. It is the 3 little gnomes, and you really don't wanna miss that one. That is going to be the next workshop coming up. So if it is out, I will post that right here, and so you don't miss it when it drops, you should go ahead and subscribe right now. And if you haven't joined the Burn Savvy Crate Club yet, you definitely need to do that. Join us over at crateclub.burnsavvy.com, and I will see you there. Hope you enjoyed this workshop. Later, Pyro.